Hello, this is Lady Tehila from the Coven of the Open Mind, and you're watching Wicca and Witchcraft 101. Hail and welcome. This is Lecture 6. Today we are going to be talking about the metaphysical centers, sort of the metaphysics of chakras and magic, and how humans interact with the higher planes of existence, how they transcend the physical. And we'll also talk a little bit about Kundalini and aligning the chakras. We'll talk about what the different chakras are individually and how each of them is brought into alignment one at a time, which you need to do before you can align all of them together, which we'll talk more about in a moment. And we'll also talk about science versus religion, right? The false dichotomy between science and religion. And we'll talk about the subject of delusion as well, and really get to the bottom of what it means to have a universalist philosophy, one that believes that all subjective truth is valid, but which has a grounding in objective reality as well, so that everyone is still doing things that are certainly healthy for themselves and not going down pathways that they can't come back from. Metaphysical centers are just the parts of physical reality, the parts of the physical body, the vessel, which are themselves not physical in nature. It's the part that is transcendent, the part that, because if you remember back to when we talked about metaphysics of divinity and you know, the higher planes of existence, how those are not some separate location somewhere you can go to. They're really just like additional dimensions of the same space-time that we live in. They are concealed because they're very small, so we don't experience them physically in daily life. So you remember all of that. If not, go back and watch it, and I'll put one of those tags on the top of the screen if you're catching this on YouTube. Now, in this one, we're going to talk about physical sensation. We're going to talk about what it means to physically sense something with your physical sense organs, right? So your eyes, your ears, your mouth, your nose, right? So if you can see it, smell it, taste it, hear it, it's physically there. If you can't do those things, or you only think you could do those things, like if you're smelling some scent on the air, but you're the only one smelling it, and it's because there's some death energy around, and for some reason it reminds you of a particular dead relative, and you're smelling their perfume, right? So there are times when you can think that you're having a sensation, and what you're really having is a perception of sensation. And that's why in modern psychology, they separate sensation from perception. So your ability to actually sense, actually become aware inside of you of some physical happening, and the ability of you to process what it is you are experiencing. Those are separate processes in the brain, in the nervous system, in the body. And we're going to talk about the implications of that for metaphysics in this lecture. All of this comes down to some like essential physics that we basically talked about a little bit already. We're not going to go into it again. So if you missed it, go back, watch my metaphysics series as well. I'll put the tag in the top. And remember from those other places, so if this is on YouTube, pause this, go and come back. Remember that everything is made of energy, right? So if you remember that everything is made of energy, even physical matter, but physical matter, the energy decoheres, right? So if energy is vibrating waves, when that energy interferes with each other, it decoheres, and that's why the matter inside of our bodies is not in a superposition. It's not an unknown state. It's in our bodies. Okay, that's how physical matter is able to come to exist. It's basically just a bunch of waves, a bunch of vibrating bits of energy that work constructively together to form some manifestation, some physical thing, our bodies, the room, the wall, you know, everything, really. The less bound that energy is to physical matter, the less bound it is, meaning like light in space is the least bound you can get, right? Like it's just energy just floating along unhindered by anything except maybe the occasional gravity well. Well, the less bound something is to physical existence, then the less physical it is in nature, and the more it experiences that higher planar physics, the weird folding through time, knowing things faster than it could transmit that information via like a light wave or whatever, right? So this ability to just kind of bend the rules when it comes to the shape of space-time, that all happens on a level of physics that is beyond our daily experiences for the most part. There's one part of the physical experience that is transcendent. There's one part of the physical body that is hard to pin down or perfectly predict or categorize even, and that part is the nervous systems. The peripheral and the central are two different types of the same idea. It's the cells that wire your body, basically, that allow for your brain to send signals throughout your body and for your body to then react to that. And also for your limbs to sense things and pass that information back to the brain. So the central nervous system is like the main controller, and then the peripheral extends throughout the body. You have more awareness and control over the things that occur in the central nervous system. And if you try to be aware of your body processes on a deeper level, you'll find that's true for sure. The stuff that goes on in your body is hard to be aware of. There's a reason why people think about it like it's me and it's my body. In reality, though, you are your body. It's one nervous system. It's one electrical field. It's one aura. It's one coalescence of energy that has a uniqueness to it, especially when you consider it like outside of time and reality, right? So the soul that is bound to this unique lifetime, the soul is unique, this lifetime is unique. It's especially a unique experience to be alive. And the idea is that the cells that perceive of all of your senses are electrical in nature, and because they're just a field, they're susceptible to interference from, quantized things going on in other fields, and you pick up on things that are external to yourself in this metaphysical way. So they call it the subtle body because the idea is that the influence is very subtle. It occurs on a level of physics that we can't measure right now. So, maybe we will be able to measure it one day. Maybe it's not possible to measure it. That could be the case. It's a very subtle experience that is not physical. You're not physically sensing it. You're not seeing it with your eyes. You're not feeling it on your skin, but you're still perceiving of it anyway. And that perception can arise from the central nervous system, from the third eye, and it can be so powerful that you also feel it in the rest of your body, which is what happens during sleep paralysis when you feel like someone is touching you. That usually arises from a sense of dread or self-loathing, some kind of self-obsession. And then it causes you to like feel like someone is touching you or standing right behind you or breathing on your neck or something, and you can't move, right? So that sort of experience is something that comes from the mind's eye, comes from the central nervous system, and then has physical sensation throughout the body. You can also have physical sensation in the body as a result of something that you would perceive of, in your mind's eye. Like it goes both ways, because every person is a whole person. So we break it down into these different energy centers and subtle bodies, whatever you want to call them, different receptor sites that are more readily able to pick up on different energies, but it's really still just one person. So we'll talk about that some more. Remember that when it comes to physical action, nobody is more powerful physically than the physical conscious actor, one who acts. A person who acts physically is the most powerful when it comes to doing physical things. when a person, when a metaphysical entity or some higher will comes to manifest into reality, it usually does that through the conscious actor. So it does that through interacting with the subtle bodies of many people and influencing them in some way, and then they influence the physical world. So human influence is the least powerful when it comes to metaphysical manifestation, affecting many, many, many people at a time. Often you even bind energy from higher sources if you want to affect many people at a time. So, or you pray or you work with deity. So you work with the forces that more readily influence subtly if you want to express will, right? So this is why you need to be aligned with those higher planes of existence in order to do successful magic, which we'll talk more about. Other names for the metaphysical self include the soul, the subtle body, the aura, energy, spirit, inner flame, inner fire, lots of things like that. In Sanskrit, the word chakra actually just means wheel or disc, and it's named like this as a part of a greater metaphor, and it's really like many things Asian. It's a stream like many things ancient Asian. It's a stream metaphor, my favorite. So, in each chakra is like a pool in the stream, and the energy is rotating in that pool, and if it's got a lot of debris in it, it's clogged up, it's got problems, then the water doesn't rotate as well, and then it doesn't flow as well into the next chakra. So if there's any blockage in any of the chakras, then the flow is messed up and all of them can be out of alignment. So it's very common for you to experience multiple chakral issues at a time, and usually whichever one is like the worst is like where you would start because you'll find that the issues in neighboring chakras may improve naturally just because they're all coming from really just the one issue. Some people have issues across multiple chakras. Just really depends on individuals and life experiences. Now, if we're going to talk about alignment, what do we mean by being aligned? We mean, that the Kundalini within you, right? So the inner serpent can rise through your body up into the heavens, receive higher wisdom and knowledge and experience timelessness and realitylessness and formlessness and such, and then bring that back down into yourself, into your vessel, and enrich you and help you live a more aligned life that both embodies the will of divinity as well as your will becoming one with divinity. So it's like, an alignment between the physical, emotional, and spiritual self. So this is like kind of the, I guess, Kundalini and chakras are probably considered Indian in origin. Um, Wicca is one of those religions that just likes to study a lot of things, and I tell people, study authentically. But this is one of those topics that people don't spend a lot of time studying authentically. So you can just learn this abridged version for now as a witch, but it's probably would be good to go look into some of this stuff further. But it's just a way of thinking about your subtle body, your metaphysical body, just a way of thinking about it that makes it easier for witches to visualize energy work and energy manipulation. So time has to be spent on each individual chakra to bring it into alignment. And there can be things going on in your life that make it hard to bring it into alignment as well. But it's pretty necessary to do chakra work of some kind, however you think of your subtle body, shadow work, taking traumas and repressed things out and making them healthy, whole things that you're comfortable with, like taking care of your physical body, exercising, eating right. Like these are all things that are necessary to wellness. So chakra work is really a process. It's a practice. It's a way of living your best life. It's a way of improving the self over time. And it's not like, okay, I'm going to meditate on my chakras or get a Reiki attunement once and now everything is aligned always forever. That's not, it's your chakras are alive, like you are alive because they are you. So keep that in mind. Okay, the chakras. The subtle bodies, the metaphysical centers, these are concentrations of cells, neurons, and cells that function by having an electrical gradient that then triggers the release of chemicals and the reception of chemicals. And it's a very fragile, delicate process that we don't really understand very well yet as a society, and people that have imbalances in their neurotransmitters often are undiagnosed for many years and have very bizarre, they're considered fringe cases, but it's really more common than we realize. It's just not usually as severe. So that's why they don't get as much attention. But maybe one day we'll have a better understanding of how electricity and chemicals really work inside of us. But for now, all we know from the science is that there is an electrical field, there are these chemicals. In our intuitive understanding, and we'll talk about what that means and what the value of that is here in a moment. In our intuitive understanding, we can influence the way that our bodies function and come to understand something about ourselves and the nature of the challenges that we will face based on how the energy flows through our chakras, how it flows through our streams. So we may know more one day, and it's also possible that the chakras are changing and that the nature of them will evolve as humans do. There may be more in time or less. I don't know. So it's, there may be other systems that are valid. It's really just a way of thinking about your electrical self so that you can interact with it more deliberately. So that's the whole point of this methodology, of this art form. Okay, so now we're going to step through each individual chakra. The root chakra, that one is located in your feet or at the base of your spine. It's believed to be whatever part of your body is touching the ground. Though, it's all just, it's really just all of that, probably your legs too, and all of it. But, it's the part of you that is your physical identity, your physical body, your stability, your groundedness, your ability to maintain a tether to objective reality, your sense of safety as well. Imbalances in this chakra cause things like anxiety, especially anxiety about like things that are outside of your control, like things that are not unlikely to happen, but at the same time not very likely. Like, it's not unlikely that a person will walk out their door and have some tragedy befall them, but it's also like you can't just not walk out your door because a tragedy could befall you at any moment. You have to live your life in spite of that. So that's the kind of anxiety or like insecurity that you're talking about usually, with the root chakra specifically. Shallowness, like just a sense of not caring, just wanting to small talk people and not really get to know them. Physical exhaustion, a lack of physical energy, just feeling like drained. Not like depression, like you want to go, you want to do, but you just don't have the energy, your joints are aching, that sort of thing. Nightmares, specifically nightmares about running. Someone's talking about that recently. That can be a root chakra issue. Colon and bladder issues are often the result of like if you have chronic issues keeping the chakra in alignment, then you can have colon and bladder issues, leg and feet issues as well. And this chakra is healed the most by anaerobic exercise, so like lifting weights, Pilates, that sort of thing, walking barefoot, and just being outdoors, taking in nature, as well as self acceptance and loving yourself, and affirmations of strength and confidence, just feeling comfortable being you and being unapologetically you and not letting things diminish yourself. That is good root chakra health. The different associations, these are things that you might just write down or take note of and make use of if you're working on a particular chakra. But basically, it goes by color. So it's like the idea is that it's like a wavelength, right? So colors are wavelengths too. So that's the metaphor. So they think that the root chakra is red, and it's associated with the earth. It's your physical vessel, right? So it's the lowest element. It's red. Cedar, sage, rosemary, patchouli, cypress, honeysuckle, truffles. black and red crystals, smoky quartz, hematite, bloodstone. The mantra, or like the common syllable that you would vibrate is Lam. And then foods you would eat are like red foods, tomatoes, beets, berries, and apples, pomegranates, sometimes watermelon, but sometimes that's another chakra. Black and red crystals, usually they'll include red jasper, black tourmaline, obsidian, onyx, ruby is another red one, stuff like that. Okay, so that's the root chakra. The sacral chakra is your womb, your reproductive organs, just that part of your body. It aligns with your emotional identity and your creativity, right? So for women, it's literally your ability to create life. It is your desire to create. It is your desire for love. It is your desire, not just for love from a sense of like, it's your desire for like intimacy with another person, not just love in any sense, intimate love. Imbalance in this chakra causes depression, moodiness. It can cause creative blocks, writer's block, um, intimacy issues, lack of receptiveness to change, and just general stubbornness, addiction. And this one is the one that's most commonly out of whack for people who have had some kind of sexual trauma or some kind of trauma in the past. It is repaired by hobbies, cooking, gardening, being self-sufficient, just enjoying your free time and doing what you love. Wholesome activities, as long as what you love is wholesome, I guess. If what you love is like, I don't know, vandalizing stuff and stealing people's belongings, then that may not be good for your chakras. Positive sexual experiences heal the chakra as well. Well received self expression. If you're doing a lot of self expressing and it's not received well, the chakra can get out of whack. Um, and you can experience like anxiety in this chakra as well, but usually it'll be a more social anxiety, like what are people thinking about me? And you heal it with affirmations of self love and just general positivity. And it's got associations as well. This one is water, so the basic emotional center of yourself. Some scents and oils, gardenia, fennel, parsley, chocolate, orange, lemon, seaweed, aloe, fern, lily, jasmine, and apricot. So chocolate, right? So that's why, it's like for women, like when you get your period, that's like a sacral chakral imbalance for many women every time they get their period. So that's why you crave these things, right? Chocolate and all this. Okay, so for crystals, amber, carnelian, tiger's eye, wolfenite, agate, and orange calcite. Anything orange. Some people will take anything yellow, but that's more the next one, the next chakra. The mantra or the syllable to vibrate for this one is Vam. The foods, oranges, melons, carrots, mangoes, apricot, and also nuts and seeds and sprouts as well. Anything that represents creative energy goes with this chakra. The solar plexus chakra. This is the ego. So we've sort of talked about the root chakra is kind of like your physical ego, your body, your physical manifestation. The sacral chakra is your emotional ego, your emotional identity. The solar plexus is like, okay, now it's combining those together. It's the holistic self. It's your personal power. It's the essence of you. It's your ambition and your motivation and your confidence and your ability to affect desire into manifestation. Imbalances in this chakra cause low self-esteem, exhausted emotions, just feeling drained emotionally, not physically, but like classic depression in this case. Like you just might think that you're putting in energy, but you're really not, right? Impatience, frustration with other people, anger, and a lack of willpower come from this chakra. So people that don't feel in control of themselves or their lives, often that's because of an issue in this chakra. Tummy pain or GI issues, as well as fear of rejection. And this chakra is healed by aerobic exercise, running, swimming, um, jumping around, doing jump rope, whatever, aerobic dancing, okay, aerobic exercise, fasting as well, eating clean and nutritious foods, as well as affirmations of accomplishment. So I get a lot done. I'm a good person. I am confident, that sort of thing. This is associated with fire, represents your inner flame. It's not like the desire as much as it's the will, right? So that's the alignment with fire. That's more classic in witchcraft. The scents for this are saffron, musk, sandalwood, cinnamon, ginger, basil, garlic, onion, pepper, motherwort, just like the fiery herbs. Crystals are anything yellow, citrine, sulfur, topaz, apatite, and yellow calcite as well. The mantra or like the vibration syllable for this one is Ram. Foods include bananas, lentils, white rice, turmeric, garlic, and onions, and peppers and ginger, and all those same things from the sense as well. Next is the heart chakra. The heart chakra governs your social identity. So, the person that you become around other people, the person that the role that you will fill when there's multiple people present, that's your social identity. Your love and your relationships, how respectful a person is, how empathic they are, will be governed by how healthy their heart chakra is. Imbalances cause difficulty with relationships, lack of compassion, paranoia, personality disorders, hopelessness, anger, grief, jealousy. So just like not fun stuff. A lot of ugly stuff goes wrong if you have heart problems, upper respiratory issues, or upper back pain. That can often be a sign of a heart chakra that is not in balance as well. So some people are just kind people and they only get those physical symptoms. So that can happen. It's repaired by spending time alone and giving to charity and affirmations of kindness. And that's it, really. So just spending time healing from whatever caused the imbalance. The heart chakra is one that is like easily sent out of whack and hard to bring back into alignment once it's messed up. So you have to guard your heart well. It's associated with both fire and air. It is like the handoff between fire to air, if you will. Scents include jasmine, rose, lavender, yarrow, orris root, meadowsweet, vervain, dill, and primrose. It's green and pink crystals this time for this chakra. So aventurine, emerald, peridot, malachite, however you pronounce it. Some people pronounce it differently. Rhodochrosite, dioptase, pink tourmaline, harlequin quartz, and kunzite as well are all the pink ones. The mantra for the heart chakra is yam, and the foods are leafy greens, peas, zucchini, avocado, and broccoli. It really does just go by color like that. So that's how they associate it all the way up. Okay, the throat chakra. The throat chakra governs your self expression, communication, your integrity, and your ability to speak the truth. If you have imbalances in the throat chakra, you will have difficulty communicating, difficulty expressing yourself, difficulty making decisions. You may have mood swings and like rapidly changing feelings as well. You repair the throat chakra by chanting and singing, writing, telling the truth, doing honesty cleanses, I guess, being true to yourself, and also affirmations of grace. And the associations are spirit and air this time. So we're going higher up the transcendency as we go, and kind of using air to transition through from the body to through the mind to the spirit. Scents and oils for this one, things that smell like fresh air. So pine should probably be on here too, but frankincense, chamomile, eucalyptus, clove, and aspen are common. Crystals, anything blue, lapis lazuli, turquoise, azurite, blue topaz, sapphire, blue lace agate, sodalite, amazonite, celestite, chrysocolla, and aquamarine. The mantra is Ham, and the foods are blueberries of all kinds, kelp, blue currants, grapes, dragon fruit, and fine foods. So sometimes people will do like fancy cuisine as well and call that. Okay, the third eye chakra, that one is in your mind's eye, so it's obvious what organs we're associating as we go up the body, I think. The third eye chakra is your self-reflection, your intuition, and your clarity of sight, your ability to not just see beyond the veil, but understand what you're seeing. Your visualization, imagination, divination. If these are things that you struggle with and being irrational is hard for you, then your third eye chakra is probably the one that needs the most work. And that does happen for a lot of people. And imbalance in the chakra causes poor intuition, impaired judgment, where like you can't tell if someone is actually good for you or bad for you, or like you can't get vibes off of people. Lack of concentration, trouble sleeping, confusion, headaches. Less commonly depression. The depression that arises from the third eye is not like as much, it's more like an existential depression. It can sometimes happen where someone is just like they're defeated, where they're like, well, what's the point of doing anything because the future is what it is and I don't have any ability to affect change at all. That is the kind of depression you sometimes see from this chakra being misaligned. It is repaired by meditating, by sleeping well. um, it is repaired by affirmations of intuitive ability and wisdom. So, as you can see, as you go up to the upper chakras, the throat, the mind's eye, and the crown, and beyond, it is easy for things to go astray, and it is hard to fix them once they do. It takes more energy to bring them into alignment. It's easier for them to fall out of alignment. And that's why people don't usually use the upper chakras as much when they're doing any kind of um, like evocative magic. If they're sending energy out of themselves, they're not using the upper chakras, which are designed more to receive energy anyway. So your central nervous system, your brain, your mind, and everything is just like, you know, for receiving, for processing, for sensing the world, right? So that is the function of the cells. That is the function of the chakra, right? So as you go up the chakras, it's harder to keep them in alignment. For the third eye chakra, some associations that may help you keep it in alignment. First of all, its element is spirit, but also light. So with the chakras, you're specifically talking about ordered energy. You're talking about things that exist, not the void. So with the third eye chakra, you're going to be seeing not into the void, but into ordered existence, alternate timelines, alternate realities, but all things that do exist somewhere in space time. The scents and oils are jasmine, mint, mugwort and mullein, callias, the dream herbs, almond, hibiscus, and alfalfa, bilberry root, juniper, and eleuthero root. The crystals are amethyst, purple crystals, sometimes blue, so sodalite makes its way into the list for this chakra as well. Moonstone, iolite, indicolite, indigo, kyanite, beryl. Lepidolite is a really good one for protecting this chakra. If you have issues, if you're sensitive, and like me, then sometimes just keeping that around, like on your desk, can help a lot. Also, labradorite and azurite. And the mantra for this one is Sham. And the foods are blackberries, purple cabbage and kale, grapes, raisins, and figs. So purple foods, and that's the third eye. The crown chakra, that is the top of your head and beyond. And that one represents your self awareness and spirituality and your connection with divinity. Imbalance in the crown chakra causes lack of inspiration, aimlessness, dissociation, loneliness, materialism, physical or emotional exhaustion. A lot of people who are energy vampires who are physically and emotionally exhausting to other people, also it's because they have a crown chakra issue, so they're like trying to like fill a hole in themselves where divinity should be with other human people, and that's why they pull so much that they exhaust people and are very parasitic. Um, People with crown chakra issues will have difficulty meditating. They'll have difficulty practicing mindfulness. They'll be very audacious. They can experience a loss of identity and have disorders related to that. They may be sensitive to light and sound. They often will have poor sleep habits and migraines and stuff like that. The crown chakra is healed by meditation and ritual and affirmations of divinity. That's about it. So, if you're having trouble with the crown chakra, sometimes like it's maybe a new archetype of deity is calling you and you're changing as a person. So you need to change the way that you practice spirituality so you can still feel in tune with divinity, right? So that sort of thing can cause like some of these issues. If you're having severe issues of a chakra misalignment, then you should probably just contact someone who can help you, like me or someone else, some spiritual leader, because this is a very difficult one to bring back into alignment. And often you have to work on the other ones first, even though that can be very difficult because with your crown chakra messed up, it's hard to know what's real. So, yeah, definitely it's easier to work with someone to get this one back into alignment if it's really messed up. The associations for this one, right? So most people say it's all of the elements. It's all of them combined into one. It's all of ordered existence. It's the all conscious. Um, some people will say that it's none of them, but that's less common because most people, when they work with chakras, they're talking about ordered existence. They're not talking about the void. So some people will use myrrh, dragon's blood, gotu kola, lotus, ginkgo, magnolia. Juniper sometimes makes this list again as well. Um, Crystals, anything that is clear, that is white, soulcite, selenite are the high vibrational ones. Clear quartz is less high vibrational. You could carry that around in a pocket. Diamond is less high vibrational. White jade is a good one. Celestite, selenite, right? All of these whiter shiny crystals. This is the syllable that everyone knows. Om. Everyone knows that one. And there's no foods that can help you with the crown chakra. Fasting can sometimes help, but other than that, mostly it's meditation and ritual and living in line with divinity of some kind. However you make sense of it. Okay, so those are all of the chakras individually. And now we will talk about how you make use of them. Um, as a part of the homework for this lecture, you should be working on meditating and bringing your individual chakras into alignment. And you can also, if that's easy for you, try doing some Kundalini meditation, where you can bring all of your chakras into alignment and feel like your energy is rising up out of your body and then coming back down into it. You can also do this thing called chakra casting or bubble casting, depending on who you ask. And this is really the basis of spell work. It's how spell work physically works. So a lot of people will just be visualizing and not necessarily aware of this more metaphysical process going on inside them. But it's a good way to start practicing spell work and understanding what spell work should feel like and what you should feel like to be able to do successful spell work. And all you do is you just align all the chakras. You take as much time as you need. You focus on them one by one if you have to, bring them into alignment. Then you just imagine like so focus on one of them, like your tummy chakra usually, or your root chakra. Depends on what kind of a spell you're doing or what kind of ritual, but the tummy is really common because it's the energy center for the body. So you focus on the tummy and you feel like that white energy or yellow energy, like the color of the chakra, filling your whole
body and mind, and and then it extends out of you, and you can feel it kind of pushing its way out into the space around you. A lot of people say like it feels like a push at first. It's a little bit challenging. It feels like a push, and then once you've pushed it out, it feels like it just expands like a bubble, right? So that's why they call it bubble casting. So you extend it outward beyond the self, and this pushes the energy of the space around you out, and it gives you a space where you can be in sacred circle and receive energies and have visual hallucinations and other kinds of things, without having to be afraid that it's being caused by some unknown energy source, or some vibration from something that you didn't intend to allow to influence you. So you push your energy out so that you have a sacred space. And you focus on the one chakra that gives the most meaning to the spell, or it naturally powers the spell in some way, and you give that one, like that's like the main chakra. But because you're one whole person and all the chakras kind of contain all the chakras, like they're all contained, so a lot of people will imagine like it starts with their tummy, but by the time they push it out of themselves, they'll imagine it as a white light or purple or blue or whatever color they want their circle to be in their mind, like when they're visualizing that space. And it comes from all your chakras, which have to be aligned before you can send energy out from any of them. Okay, so now we're going to shift a little bit and talk about science versus religion. Okay, the false dichotomy. They are not dichotomous. Science and religion are different methods. They exist to answer different kinds of questions. Science answers the question, what is it? Religion answers, what does it mean? And it's really just, you can't use the scientific method to answer the question, what does it mean? And you can't use religion to answer the question, what is it? Right? You have to use the right method for the right question, or you're going to get the wrong answer, or at least an answer that only applies to you, or even if it is objective truth, you got lucky. Okay, that's not really how you can know for sure that it's an objective truth. The only way to know for sure is to eliminate as much bias as possible, reduce bias, and that is the point of the scientific method. What is in a method, right? The scientific method surely answers all question of what is it, because it naturally does two things. One, it quantizes bias, right? It reduces the bias in each individual person who is engaged in that process. It reduces that bias to the smallest amount possible. And because humans are human, mortal people, okay, because they're people, that often means that they are still biased in some way. And the scientific method is only as good as the flawed humans who created it. So it's not perfect. And sometimes we do think things are true that are not true. But for the most part, things that become widely accepted, really high quality theories, especially in harder sciences like physics, and biology and chemistry, it's easier to uncover truths that are certainly true, that are maybe not always true. There's a complexity, there's a nuance, there's something that is missing from those theories, that doesn't invalidate the whole theory once you find it. And with the scientific method, we can know things to be true, even though we later know them to be more true. So, it's one of those things. And so an example is Newton's laws of motion, which are right if you want to calculate how long a roller coaster will take to reach the bottom of a hill and how far up the next hill it will go without needing a boost. You could figure all of that out with classical mechanics, and you don't have to care at all, about this gamma factor that Einstein discovered when he came up with his theory of general relativity, and realized that when things are traveling really, really fast, close to the speed of light fast, they have a dilation effect. They experience physical reality differently. And how differently do they experience it? gamma. So he just added a factor that is based on the observation of the observed behavior of light as it relates to gravity, as it experiences gravity. So that's one of our metaphysics videos. I'll have to put the link to that one as well. So if you're interested in that, go check it out. Another example is like there's the standard model, right? So that describes all the particles in existence, and they're doing experiments now, like neutrino double beta decay experiments, that may change the way we understand the Higgs field, which is what gives matter mass. Right? So we talked about that in the metaphysics series as well. So that's another example. So even though we know a lot of things because of physics and the scientific method, we may still learn more about those things and nuance them and qualify them in ways that people will be like, well, it's just a theory, but it's not just a theory, right? It's not just a theory. A scientific theory is an explanation of the world that is rigorous and reproducible and falsifiable. And if it's widely accepted, then that's usually because many people have reproduced it and verified the math and all this. A law is an observation of the world. So theories do become laws. They often will start as theories, they'll start as theoretical. It'll arise from the math. Basically, a lot of ways that we understand theoretical physics comes from looking for symmetry breaks. We'll just take these big, complicated equations that no one can solve, and we'll be like, okay, what about physical reality might change this equation subtly? Maybe we can reduce this term to zero because it's negligible or something, right? So they'll take symmetry breaks, they'll take times where reality behaves slightly differently under different circumstances, and then use that to try to solve these complex math equations. And that's where most of theoretical physics is doing work. So, if it's a law, usually a scientific law that is something that we've observed, it's time tested, it's probably not wrong because we can see it with our eyes. And a theory is like, okay, maybe it can be wrong, but probably it's right. And we may just have to qualify it or add some corrective factors or understand how it behaves in different circumstances and that sort of thing. So you can generally improve on what is known to be factual without negating what we already know to be factual. And that is the reason why the scientific method is the most unbiased that we will get for any method, probably as long as humans are flawed beings themselves who devise flawed processes. So with the scientific method, we can come to know objective truths. We can come to know things that are true for all people, um, limitations born about by biology, right? Humans don't have wings, so humans can't fly. So if a person comes along and tells you that they are a bird and they can fly, you're still going to probably try to stop them from jumping off a bridge, right? Because probably they're actually a human and they actually can't fly. So it's very obvious in those extreme situations where the line between delusion and not delusion lies. And oftentimes the line lies with, does it violate the laws of physics or biology? Like, does it violate some objective truth, right? Subjective truths should never be considered to be as powerful as objective ones. They're never going to be as true. They're never going to be as strong. They're only going to apply to a subset of people. If it applies to every single person, no matter what, then it's an objective truth, right? And the whole point of the scientific method is to determine, is it objective or not? So one example that I like to use, and this one's in my book as well, is, a cloud in the sky. Can science tell you that there is a cloud in the sky? Yes. Science can tell us that. It can measure the water vapor. It can measure, what it looks like, the reflection of light off of the cloud. It can measure all these things, and we can know beyond a shadow of a doubt there is a cloud. How big is the cloud? Is it going to rain? What is the nature of the cloud? All of that information we can only learn with science. If you go and ask a person who is religious, they'll just be like, "Well, I see a cloud." I see one. Does that mean there necessarily definitely is one? Well, maybe we can go and ask every person that exists. Okay, do you see a cloud? Do you see a cloud? Everyone sees a cloud. Does that mean there really is one? So now you know why epistemologists and whatever people who existed in the past who did philosophy spent so much time asking themselves, what is the truth? And people are like, oh, we can't know what is true. Oh, look at this big major. No, we can, okay? We do science now. So we can know it's true using the scientific method. And that's why we use science to measure the cloud. We know there's a cloud. But can we answer the question with science, what does the cloud look like? I say it looks like a spider. You say it looks like an elephant. Neither one of us is lying. Certainly neither one of us is not speaking the truth. We are both speaking our truths about what it looks like, what it resembles. And science could analyze the image and say, oh, it looks more like an elephant based on these 70 shapes. But that doesn't mean the person who thinks it looks like a spider has to admit that it looks like an elephant. They can still say, well, I see a spider. I can't not see a spider. So what does the cloud resemble? What does the cloud mean? How do you relate to having seen the cloud? All things that cannot be answered or perfectly predicted with science. The only way that you could come to understand how a person will relate to some subject is by watching them experience it. I learned that by having children and not realizing what could or could not be considered frightening to a child, and that it differs from one child to the next, even from a very young age. It's very interesting. So there's no surety when it comes to subjective truth. There's just, this is true for me. And maybe even a group of people, if they all agree and they have precisely the same idea, like when a group of Wiccans is visualizing the same circle at the same time in the same color. Subjectively, there is a circle. That is true. Whether or not the people in the surrounding area will perceive of that circle or leave them alone will certainly depend on the ability of the magical practitioners to project that reality onto the world around them. So the circle may become an objective truth if other people obey it and respect it even without knowing it is there or the nature of it or understanding how any of that is done. They may still respect that circle and watch from a distance and not interfere. And if that's the case, then that circle is objectively there, right? So the last thing to note about objective versus subjective truths is that you cannot prove subjective truths, or they wouldn't be subjective, right? So everything we've just said boils down to that. You can't ask a person to prove a subjective. Prove to me there is a God. Prove to me that I can have a relationship with God. Prove to me that you have a relationship with God. Prove to me none of that is provable. Prove to me your magic exists or works. It's subjective. It's a subjective truth. So no amount of proving it to you will make it true for you, unless you want it to be true for you and you find a way to deliberately believe in it and make it your truth. You have to be a willing participant in that, unless you talk about more advanced magic, which we will eventually. But generally speaking, if it's a subjective truth, tough, okay? Whether or not other people are going to believe. If you believe that it's against God's will to be homosexual, and in spite of whatever you may personally feel, you are determined to have a heterosexual relationship and have children, and that's what you're determined to do one way or the other, great. That's what God wants from you, great. You can believe that. That's totally legit. You believe that other people should therefore not be allowed to be homosexual. No, that's delusional. Believing that God wants that is delusional because it's projecting an aspect of existence on to God, right? Who is all aspects of existence. That's what we've talked about in past lectures. So that's objective versus subjective truths. And what it means is that science can't answer questions of meaning or purpose. So, and it's not advantageous to use religion to answer those questions either, because you'll get answers, you'll get results that are not reproducible, that are custom, that may or may not be true for everyone. So you can present something as an objective truth. Someone will come along and say, this is not true for me. Suddenly they can't relate to you. You're not communicating, you're talking past each other. That's like the best case scenario for a person that presents subjective truths as objective ones. But even still, it does happen. Sometimes people don't realize that they don't have all the picture. It happens even to me. So, all you can do is reassess your biases often, and look for new information and try to think about what you may not know and seek it out, and listen when people speak, because you never know what you might learn, right? So that's all you can really do. Now, what happens to those who do take this to crazy extremes? Okay, delusion sets in. There are different forms of delusion depending on, if it's a controlled experience, if it's an uncontrolled experience. If it's uncontrolled, that means that you are being destructive, your altered state of being or your lack of health is interfering with your ability to be effective, to be happy, to live an aligned existence. And the delusion that you experience will take different forms depending on the misalignment that brought it up, that results in it. So now let's talk a bit about delusion and catastrophe and what I mean by the term delusion, especially when it comes to things like we don't allow delusion on our server. So a lot of people will see that and be like, what does that mean? Does that mean? Okay, so I'll tell you. So delusion is any time that you expect another person to treat your subjective truth as their objective reality. So let's take, for example, a person who is transgender, a person who believes they are the opposite sex on the inside, or they have the gender of the opposite sex from how they were born, whether or not they transition. Okay, so if a person really does come across like a woman, they think like a woman, they have the tendencies to listen and be receptive and be empathic, and they're less audacious, they really interact with people like a woman, then it'll be easy for them to convince other people that they're women, because it'll be obvious when you interact with them. If that person is saying, I want to have a sex change, I want to be seen as a woman in society, I'm going to take an effort to be seen like that, that's not delusional. Okay, that's just them living their best life. That's them being the person that they want to be. It's not any different than dyeing your hair, okay? It's expressing themselves. And their journey is atypical, is different. They were wired wrong, right? So there's nothing wrong with that, in the sense that now that they've corrected it, they're living their best lives. Then great. If now that they've corrected the issue, they're living their best lives, and that's genuinely true, then it's not delusional. It crosses over into the delusional space when those people start to say, I have an identical experience to someone who was born this sex. That's not true. I can speak for people who are born this sex. Probably you shouldn't. Okay, so when you start to say, my understanding of this subject is good, is better than yours, is more complete, I don't have to listen to you because you don't know what you're talking about. You do see people have an obsession with their own security and their own identity to the exclusion of listening to other people or allowing other people their subjective experiences. So that would be delusional, right? So that's where it crosses that line. And it's a really bold, obvious line. It's not a fine line. It's like, if your subjective truth applies to just you, and you don't care if people misgender you because you're just like, whatever, I'm living my best self and they'll figure it out or they won't, and I don't care. This is who I am. Okay? That is healthy, right? And the people who take the time to love themselves, even when they have this miswiring, even when they're like, I've got this inability, like, and they're changing their sex as a form of empowerment because they are taking charge over their lives, and they're understanding their internal self, and now what they're doing and how they're acting is a commitment to that self. That's a form of empowerment. That's not delusional. So it's a very obvious line in the sand, right? Abortion. Is it delusional to believe that a child is alive, has a heartbeat? I mean, it looks like a space peanut, but if you want to believe that a child is alive from 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever, and fine, believe that. But we don't know it for sure. It's not an objective truth. We don't really know. And as a person who's grown children inside of me, I can tell you, for me personally, it does not feel like life. It just feels terrible until pretty late in the pregnancy, like 7 months, probably 8 months. Probably 7 months, six and a half. Depends on if it's a boy or a girl. It was different. But so in my subjective experience, it's just not a living being inside of you. And once it is, it's viable. So it's like, okay, then the right thing to do is to allow every person to decide for themselves, because we don't objectively know this fact. So if you just use this one truth, that objective truth is a stronger truth than subjective truth, you can allow religion and science to coexist peacefully, and you can use this framework to resolve ethical gray areas very easily by just saying either we know it objectively by scientific measures or we don't. And if we're not sure that we know it for sure, then we have to leave it up to everyone's interpretation. That's it. That's how simple it is to avoid delusion. Now, catastrophe is the polar opposite of what I'm describing. Catastrophe is when a person falls into delusion more and more, especially if they're taking magic too far, they're doing dangerous magical things. So you'll hear me say the word catastrophe again and again. I'll say it as a consequence of making bad magical decisions. And catastrophe is when you're trying to make use of dissociation or delusion for some ritual purpose, but it goes awry. You have consequences to your ego, yourself. Your tether to reality is not maintained, so your sense of self is corrupted, or the bridge that connects you to yourself is, so you can't really come back into yourself. So you can result in having like psychosis and psychotic breaks, and full-blown disorders can form, and it can be very dangerous to work with some things, especially people that work with them naturally get themselves in trouble from a young age. And avoiding delusion and catastrophe really just means living an aligned life. Okay, it means meditating a lot, worshiping divinity in some form, external consciousness, having some positive relationship with the idea that you can't control everything, basically. The part of you that you can't control, the rest of the universe. You have to have a positive relationship with that to be healthy. Go figure. Just coming to know the truth, to have a sense of knowing, a solid intuition built around your metaphysical ability to interact with the world in a different way. And in Kabbalah, this sense of knowing is called Chachma, and it means wisdom. And it's the sephirah, or quality of God, that represents egolessness. It's like the bridge. It's the crown chakra in Kabbalah. It's like the bridge to deity, right? So that's like the entry point. And it's said to be a combination of da'at and binah, which is knowledge and understanding. So when these two come together, that's when they transcend a shallow sense of knowledge or a shallow sense of understanding, and it becomes conceptual. So an example I give is gravity, right? So from a young age, you learn about gravity, and you couldn't necessarily sit and do the math. You couldn't necessarily do calculations and know how much is the force of gravity on your body as you're about to take the next step. You unconsciously know what the force of gravity is. You've conceptualized it from a young age, and you can just walk without ever thinking about gravity because you're just used to it. So that sort of experience is the chachma. It is the part of the human body or mind, the part of the embodied physical existence that can just be aware of things, that can just know things, that can just intuitively understand something without having to really spend time processing it. And you know you're not really spending time, right? If you're spending time processing your walking, then you would see more humans would be walking and suddenly they're just like, and they're just like frozen and they can't finish the step. You would see that happen more often if we had to process in order to act. We don't. We don't have to process it. We don't have to make any calculations. We can just do, right? And that's why you never see like a glitch where a person suddenly stops walking somewhere, right? So like delusion, catastrophe, these are things that happen if you're being reckless with magic. These are things that happen if you are not taking the time to understand objective reality. You can also find that you have bad things happen because you don't take the time to understand irrationality, right? So people that don't understand religious people or why someone might be religious or that are not respectful of religious beliefs because they have some obsession with like objective truth. Listen, I get it, okay? I used to be insufferable in exactly that same way. And then I watched The Polar Express as an adult and realized what it means to believe in something and to have faith in something and to understand that comfort is well earned for people who do have faith. And just because you don't understand their faith doesn't mean that, and just because they have that faith doesn't mean that, right? So it doesn't mean anything. Everyone's an individual. So treat them like individuals, respect their faith. It's better for you to respect other people's faith because you'll get along better. And, you know, it's the difference between being able to say, well, there's no scientific evidence for God in the middle of like some party because someone said, God bless you or something, right? And being able to just be like, oh, well, I don't believe in that, but thank you for wishing me well. You know what I mean? Like the difference between just saying thanks when someone says God bless you and like insulting them because they are talking about their God or something, right? So that is really what it comes down to. It's like an obsession with objective truth to the exclusion of subjective truth is like just rude. Honestly, like let people be people. Let people be individual people. What is that? Why is that so hard for like the free thinkers of the modern age to just like let people use metaphors and exaggerations and stuff? And people are just data obsessed these days. But irrational thoughts are necessary to believing that anything you do has purpose because science cannot tell you what the purpose of life is. That's the joke from that Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy movie when she's like, the purpose of life is 42 because it's like it's a stupid question. It's a stupid question. If you're asking the universe what its purpose is with math, you're doing it wrong. Have some fun. You probably are missing the point. Now, rational thought is necessary to understanding what is objectively true. People that are too irrational, that are ignorant to science, these people have larger egos, they have self-obsession or vanity issues, they may be proud, they may have a lack of genuineness where they care more what people think about them than being nice or like what the person actually just thinks or feels. These are the ones who you'll find who are dogmatic, who believe my truth is everyone's truth. These are the ones who are often causing religious trauma. These are the ones that have a negative impact on society. Not all religious people, just the religious people that have too much of an obsession with irrational thought, who are not trying to make their beliefs congruent with science. They don't care if it's compatible. They just care about their truths and their beliefs. That can get you into danger. That can get you into trouble. It's important to know what is the objective truth. Okay, now what is my meaning from it? Right? Okay, so those who are too rational, who are ignorant to religion, are assholes. And they may have trouble with dissociative states, depression, existential crises, just feeling like there's no point to anything, social anxiety, trouble fitting in because oftentimes they have an obsession with objectivity that makes it hard for them to get along with people. And also another detriment to society is that there's a lot of bad research out there on mental health disorders and mental health in general, and people just don't understand the nature of psychosis and they don't really know how to properly treat it a lot of the time. People don't understand divergencies, focus divergencies, especially like ADHD is not a disorder unless you suck. Like, it's really not. Like, people that have ADHD that focus differently, they just focus differently. That doesn't mean that they have a disorder if they're able to capitalize on the different nature of the way they focus. Then they're just different. So it's like one of those things where it's like it's only disorder if it's really causing dysfunction in your life. Does that mean that it's a mental health disorder, or does that mean that we don't understand the concept of focus as a society? Okay, so that is what happens when people have an over-reliance on data and they reduce humans to numbers on a sheet, and they don't really take the time to understand conceptually what is going on inside a person. They are instead obsessed with what is the norm, what is the standard, what happens to the most number of people, and they do that to the exclusion of caring about subjective truths. That is detrimental to society as well. With the right balance, with mindfulness and awareness, then a person can learn to be a self, to have perception and self identity, and yet still perceive of the world around themselves as if they were no more or less important than any other selves. So that is the goal. And it is critical to doing successful magic because magic is more than just delusion. It is more than hypnosis. It is more than the placebo effect. It is more than that. It is those things when you're making internal changes within yourself. But it is also a push of will onto the world around you using metaphysical means. Okay? And in order to know if that is successful, you have to be able to know things. You have to be able to put the self aside and see the world as it is. And magic is the manipulation of external energy using delusion as a tool. Okay, and you put yourself into a delusional state of mind so that you can see the energy around you, so that you can perceive of it as if it were physical energy, and that makes it easier for you to interface with it. So there's always some placebo effect involved with magic because you're always going into a controlled state of delusion. It's just a question of whether or not you're meaning to send will out into the world around you. And if you are, you're doing that on a level of energy itself, the quantized energy field that is all of existence, this interconnected process. You are manipulating it on the finest level possible using chaos divinity, right? Like that's one force, that's we call it chaos or divinity or whatever you call it. And all of existence itself exists on this level. So it's a very tiny, subtle change. It's just the tiniest of changes that you expect will propagate out into the world. It will inspire commitment to the goal from yourself or those in your life, and through the actions of many people may come to be. Now, it's critically important to successful magic to be mindful and in control of the whole ego and the whole experience and the control delusion. If you lose control of it at all, catastrophe. Okay? So for many people, this is going to mean doing regular shadow work because they have to take effort in order to be their best selves, in order to be aware of the full ego. And you can't be repressing things and be aware of it. If you're actively repressing something, pushing it into the shadows of your being, trying not to think of it, that doesn't actually make it go away. That just makes it so that you don't have any awareness over it or any control over it. So many people have that shadow and are not totally aware of themselves, especially when they begin as witches. And that's why a lot of people do need teachers. to help them know when they're ready to be considered a witch or to initiate. They need teachers to know if the magic they're doing is successful. They need teachers, for a lot of reasons. Now, mind alteration and magic, to sum up this whole subject, remember that magic is not just mind alteration. You use the mind alteration to make it easier for you to interact with the world around you in a metaphysical way, and that has a physical sensation associated with it. Goosebumps, electricity, trembling, shivers, the kinds of things you feel when you're in a big sporting event or you're at a concert, right? Those are places where you could go to feel transcendence and to feel magic. Some will feel a sensation in their tummy like butterflies or like free fall. Some people will have like an emotional, transcendental sort of like just sense of oneness with the room or the group or whoever they're doing the ritual with, or whatever energy is being invoked or communed with. So that is what it feels like to do successful magic. If your magic is successful, you will know. There will be no doubt, even in your unconscious shadow self. And you have to be aware of that. You have to know what's going on in your shadow well enough to know if you are wishful thinking or not. And I do spells sometimes where I do the spell and do the whole thing, and then I walk away and I'm like, there's no way that that is going to work. There's no way that that was successful magic. I don't think my heart was fully in that, or there's probably some reason why this isn't going to work because, and I can just tell. And at first, when I first started with witchcraft, I couldn't tell. I'd do a spell, it would never happen. I'd be like, ugh, why is this so hard? But after a while, I could do a spell and then just know right away that was or that wasn't going to cut it, for, maybe not always why, but I have that sense of knowing now, and you gain that over time as a person who does magic, throughout your life. As long as you're actively assessing your biases, understanding objective reality, keeping a tether to reality, being responsible how you use magic and what you're trying to accomplish, working with others to help you gauge, like, does this sound like a reasonable thing that I have accomplished, that sort of thing. Having a community is very important. So keep in mind also that some people are not readily capable of this kind of knowing. Some people, even who call themselves spiritual leaders, are not capable of this. So even people that you seek guidance from, if they are not like an enlightened spiritual person, if they are just, well, this is my truth, treat it as such, right? Okay, thanks for sharing that. And you can learn something from anyone's truth. But if it's not your truth, then don't let it act like your truth in your life. And that is how you live an empowered existence. So I'll leave you with that. And this time, if you're doing the homework and keeping up with the reading, this is the second half of chapter 3. We do not have class next week. It's Beltane. We'll have a barbecue here and we'll have ritual during the daytime on Beltane itself. Then we have 2 more lectures next month where we'll be getting into chapter 4 and having a lot of fun. We're finally going to be doing witchcraft. The world is alive. There's plenty of ingredients out there in nature. There's lots of life everywhere. As we head into Beltane, we're going to learn how to capitalize and make use of the life that's all around us and feel in tune with it and use it in our spiritual practices as well. So for now, keep meditating. Try chakral meditation and Kundalini meditation now that you know how to do them or what they are. Try to keep going with the exercises at the end of the chapter, numbers 2 and 3. It's questions 19 through 40 at the end of that chapter, and the exercises are all just, be reflective about the meditations you've been trying and think about the chakras. Try chakra casting, right? So that's what you're going to be doing this time. Really try to take the next few weeks and master meditation, become aware of yourself, do some shadow work, seek, guidance and truths from other people. Be like, this is what's going on in my life. What do you think? Tell me the truth, right? I can handle it. That kind of seeking is how you become your best self and you perform your best magic safely, happily, in love and light. And from everyone here at the Covenant of the Open Mind, blessed be. See you guys next time.